Hey, folks. Welcome to another episode of Unfinished Business. I'm a little bit on the road. That's why you see the different background. But hey, we're here to deliver you a kind of a special episode where we talk about the life and career mostly of Sidney Poitier. By the way, my name is Jeff Galashaw, your host, if you don't already know. And with me, as always, is my co host, Andre Joseph.
Welcome, everyone.
Yes, unfortunately, Sidney Poitier passed recently, and he was too much of an icon to just, let it be a mention and talk about his greatness. Here, we're going to go through his career, not his whole career. Calm down, folks. But as much of his career as we can talk about out of what we've seen over the years. I want to start the show off by talking about his the movies he directed. Some of them he starred in, but quite a few of them he only directed. Let's start off with his directorial debut, Buck and the Preacher, a Western and a surprisingly dark Western, even though Harry Belafonte gives, kind of a general comedic performance in it, but still the material is just like kind of shock. It's more shocking for Harry Belafonte to be in this type of film than it is for Sidney Poitier, because this just goes with his career, telling stories about African Americans and history and being around mostly Caucasians. I will admit I didn't see this film till recently. This was one of those you always hear about but you never actually watch, and I have to say it is a pretty solid first film for him as a director. Of course, he plays the lead role, all serious, playing, the classic kind of cowboy character. Andre, have you seen Buck and the Preacher?
Yeah, I saw Buck and the Preacher a couple of years ago, I think on Star Channel, and I was watching it for inspiration for what that I'm still trying to make the mistake called American Gunslingers. So, it definitely was for that time rare to see a black cowboy movie, and especially one that starred somebody of his caliber, because you got to think about Sidney Poitier in terms of his roles trying to break racial barriers. They were not the stereotypes that white Americans being on like Amos and Andy or Step and Fetch It. This was not that guy, or Mantan Moreland, the one that was breaking the mold and showing people they could be, changing the image of how blacks were depicted on screen. So, not only was it his directorial effort, it was almost kind of an accident that that happened. It wasn't intended that way. It was supposed to be Joseph Sargent who directed Take It Upon Three with the original director. And I don't know the circumstances of why he ended up in the film. Creative difference. Ed Sidney took it upon himself to direct the movie. So, again, breaking the barriers right there. And Harry Belafonte, it was a different role for him because we're so used to him being kind of clean cut, uppity, and always smiling and singing. And here, he's kind of like this broken teeth, drunken preacher. It's like an early Buddy movie before Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor came along.
Yeah, and I also like the fact that with Harry Belafonte's character and through the movie, he's kind of like a triple agent because at one point, you think, oh, he's gonna betray you, then he's on your side, then he betrays you again, then he's on your side again. So you're never quite sure where his loyalty lies. And I mean, it's a good movie that keeps you guessing, but also it's a kind of a black cowboy film that also makes you proud. Not as proud as maybe Posse or the recent The Harder They Fall, but for its time period, this was probably like the best you were gonna get. you know. Okay, so next up, that was 1972. In 1974, he started what might be his most popular film and buddy comedy with the now canceled Bill Cosby, or infamous Bill Cosby, with Uptown Saturday Night, which I'm going to admit is probably out of the three movies that they made together as a buddy, probably the best one out of the three. This one involves the lottery ticket that Bill Cosby character has, and it's won, but then he lose it. Then you have like Richard Pryor in the film playing a detective who's supposed to help them find it. And it's like who's who of black comedians and actors of the 1970s. You know, you have Roscoe Lee Brown, Flip Wilson, Calvin Lockhart, Rosalind Cash, Paula Kelly, and you even have a cameo by Mr. George Foreman in the beginning. And of course, Ozzie Davis. And, you know, I mean, this movie is hilarious, you know, but it also sets like the culture of the time period. You know, some of the costumes might have been a little far off, but it's another solid film. And the thing that shocks me is that for a dramatic actor, Sidney Poitier directed a lot of comedies. You know, I don't know if this was just something for him to like relieve himself from just always being so serious, maybe being taken a little more seriously, or maybe it had something to do with just box office type potential. But this is like really a solid movie, the most memorable out of the three. Did you see Uptown Saturday Night?
I never saw Uptown Saturday Night or Let's Do It Again. I know, shocking and probably harder to watch it now. Thank you, Bill. But the thing I'll say, I'll give it some context here because I think
Okay.
mentioned is that this was 1974, as you mentioned. Blaxploitation movies were the thing at that moment. Shaft, Superfly, Black Caesar, Box Town, and the list goes on and on. And you know, there were some efforts to try to get Sidney involved in those type of movies, and he wanted nothing to do with that. He looked down at that genre as just taking a step backwards. Like, yeah, you're creating black tough characters, but now you're just perpetuating the stereotype. And then Hollywood took advantage of that and made it even 10 times worse with like Blackula and Abby, the Exorcist spoof. So I think
Hey, Blackula's not that bad.
it's got its fans, but it was like at that point, I think he was aware of the fact that he was so mundated with like these serious upright characters that he was playing that he felt at that point, I need to go the opposite. I need to loosen up. I need to do something that's fun. And Cosby, who was, very safe to look at back in those days, was the right guy to put him with to kind of have this sort of natural chemistry between them, much like he did with Harry Belafonte in Buck and the Preacher. And so much so that, over the years, people have wanted to remake that. They've wanted to do it with Martin and Will. They want to do it with Denzel and Will, like
yes, I was
that,
really hoping for that one.
yeah, the straight, dramatic black man put with somebody that's got a little more charm and comedic chops.
Well, interesting fact. Kevin Hart was working on a remake of it, and can you guess who the dramatic actor was going to be to play his comedic partner?
Don't tell me to do that.
Chadwick Boseman, the late Chadwick Boseman.
That actually, I would have paid to see that.
Same here. I know you're not the biggest Kevin Hart fan, so I know how big that is for you. Any last things you want to say about Uptown Saturday Night?
Other than the fact that I just when I could get over the Cosby hump, and that's going to be hard.
I'd say it's worth seeing. Let me just put it to you that that's what I believe, even with Cosby in it, because luckily, shockingly, in all of these films, Sidney Poitier does most of the heavy lifting, even though he's the more dramatic person in these films. Whereas, Cosby is there more for the outrageousness. I'll talk a little about Let's Do It Again, even though you haven't seen it. So we'll just speed by this one. It was followed the next year by an immediate sequel, Let's Do It Again, which isn't as good as the first film, but it does have John Amos as one of the main villains. And I mean, depending how you look at him, Jimmy Walker's in this one as a boxer. And it involves hypnotism. The one thing that sets this movie apart that makes it a little more memorable out of the three, there is a very long chase sequence through alleys and through people's apartments that definitely influenced House Party, for instance, and definitely influenced the Friday After Next, the third Friday film. This is the original. It does it best, so we can at least say that this film influenced other black films with that chase sequence. I'm sure some other, more Caucasian films also. And then we'll get into, now we're going to talk about their third collaboration, and not their last though, but their third, A Piece of the Action. This one is separate from the other two, whereas this is involves them playing con men who have to somehow go undercover. I don't exactly remember the exact plot of why they have to go undercover, but they're helping underprivileged kids at a school so that they can find some kind of money or treasure that they hid there years before. Again, Sidney Poitier is doing the heavy action because he's the one with the girlfriend trying to impress her family, his much younger girlfriend, and he's the one doing the teaching, whereas Bill Cosby's in the background trying to romance the principal. But this film also has a lot of young actors. Like it has Janet Dubois plays the young girl's grandmother, an alcoholic, but it has James Earl Jones in a supporting role. It has, again, Denise Nichols is in this. You have a young Cheryl Lee Ralph. You have a young Ernest Thomas. This one, I'll admit, was very late. I didn't see this until my early 30s on cable. It's actually a surprisingly solid film. And obviously, I would have to say the less out of the three, but this one has the most uplifting message by the end. Did you by any chance see this film?
I saw this movie probably on Channel 11 while The Cosby Show was still on the air. So
Wow.
it's been a long time. I do remember the two of them having to save a school. I remember James Earl Jones as the bad guy. For some reason, I keep thinking William Sadler's in the movie, but he wasn't even acting until that time for some reason. But that was the thing too. Was like with all those movies, they hired like some famous black actor to be the villain. So here, James Earl Jones, Uptown Night was Calvin Lockhart, and then John Amos. So let's do it again. So there was definitely a pattern of like Sidney always getting his friends together to kind of work and have some fun from all the dramatic stuff that they were doing outside that.
Yeah, and this is also the film where Sidney, for the first time, retired from acting. So after this, it was pretty much, directing, and we'll get to those films. So next was 1980 Stir Crazy. I mean, come on. If you're a fan of comedy, you've obviously seen this. This is one of the most infamous or famous Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor comedies, and really kind of a leap for him because this is his first straight out, just pure comedy. There's some dramatic scenes, obviously exposing racism in this prison context, but it's more like a comedic showcase. And, of course, there's stories that, Richard Pryor was always high during the making of this film. It has a cameo from Apollo's trainer from the Rocky movies. I mean, again, you have, hold on, looking at the cast list, George Stanford Brown playing the homosexual prisoner who befriends Richard Pryor. I mean, you have Craig T. Nelson as the sadistic deputy. You have Barry Corbin as the warden, and one of my favorite comedic actors and comedians, Franklin AJ, in a cameo in the hospital, talking about how they accidentally, it's not funny, but the way he delivers it, how they accidentally castrated him, and which scares Richard Pryor straight out of the house. It's a movie you have to see if you are a true fan of comedy, either Gene Wilder or Richard Pryor. Directorial wise, the film works. There's nothing special necessarily about the directing other than maybe the performances he gets out of everybody that can be dramatic in one scene, but also just so over the top comedic in another. I'm thinking of the bar scene when the guy has the other guys, nuts in a grip, or when they first go to a holding cell and trying to act tough, and the big guy comes up to him, and just how much crying Richard Pryor is doing. And then he's trying to light a match and he can't. Then he somehow lights it on the guy's chest. I'm just like, this film's full of comedic moments. Tell me, what do you think of Stir Crazy?
I mean, you most you mostly said everything. I mean, to me, it's the best of the Pryor and Wilder team ups. You know, it's the most absurd, the most over the top. Um, it's dramatic at points, but it's not, over the head with it like maybe some of the other Portier and Cosby movies. And maybe you could even say maybe a precursor to Dumb and Dumber, because that's the kind of tone that this movie was going for, which is shocking coming from Sidney as a director. It's just it's all out fun, colorful characters, and Joe Beth Williams looked freaking gorgeous in this film. I think this is the best she's ever looked, even after this movie.
Obviously, you are not a fan of the movie Teachers.
Doesn't do it for me in that
I'm
film.
sorry. I think she's beautiful in that movie. And next, we're going to throw it to you because this is the one Sidney Poitier movie that he directed that I did not see, but is very infamous because it is 19, I believe, is it 82?
Yes, 1982's Hanky Panky.
Oh, actually, I was going to go with Fast Forward next.
Fast forward after.
Oh, okay. So talk about Hanky Panky. I personally, another apparently directed film I didn't see from beginning to end. And
So Heggy Panky was originally it was planned to be a follow-up to Stir Crazy. I've heard conflicting reports it was either going to be a sequel or it was just going to be another Richard Pryor, Gene Wilder team up. But Richard Pryor had the accident where he burned himself, so he couldn't do the movie. They rewrote his role into a female, and they cast Gilda Radner, who subsequently would fall in love with Gene Wilder in real life and got married. Basically, it was another one of the films of Gene Wilder being somebody accused for a crime he didn't commit. In this case, uh, it's like Kathleen Quinlan gives him this microfilm. She gets killed by Richard Widmark playing the villain. He was obviously good friends with Sidney, so we cast him in this.
mm,
And then somewhere along the way, he's framed and he's on the run for the law. He teams up with Gilda Radner because her brother was killed by Widmark. And basically, they're trying to like run around the country, clearing their names. They're on the run. And, it's basically like Silver Streak all over again, but
okay.
without Richard Pryor's involvement. It's, you know, it, it's a movie that feels very uneven because where Stir Crazy was all out comedy, this film, when it gets to like the dramatic and sometimes violence, it gets a little too hard. I mean, there's an entire sequence where, okay, the first part of the movie, you're thinking Kathleen Quinlan's going to be the love interest of Gene Wilder,
Hmm.
but then she gets cornered in a hotel room by Richard Widmark, and Richard Widmark beats the living hell out of her. I mean, this was like uncomfortable to watch to the point where ultimately she gets killed. But this is a movie where it's like 48 hours was just a few months away, which took the next extreme to this. But
Okay.
this is the one where it was kind of like if you were expecting a Gene Wilder, Mel Brooks type of comedy, this was not it. And I think, it was trying to be more like a comedic Hitchcock film that went a little too far on the violence, if you ask me.
Okay. Well, it would have been interesting if, since Richard Pryor was supposed to play the Gilda Radner, if they would have fallen in love, their characters fell in love. Then it would have been way ahead of its time, and people could have said, "Whoa, that's different."
The
Mm.
studio thought it was going to be a big hit, and they were actually considering getting the three of them together for a movie, but that never materialized.
That would have probably been better than the next film that Sidney Poitier directed, which was Fast Forward. The Is it a dance movie or is it a break dancing movie?
It's actually both.
Oh, ooh. I'm wondering, was just Sidney Poitier into like just dancing? Did he want to make something close to a musical, or is it just something in the arts that he wanted to express? Mm,
It was something he wanted to. I mean, look, Breaking came out the year before. This Fast Forward came out in 1985. So Breaking, Flashdance, they started the whole dance craze in film again. I mean, dance craze was already nuts in MTV land. And so I'm trying to remember, like, it was supposed to be like these kids from another part of the country. They come to New York, they're trying to compete. It's kind of like the Breaking plot, and then everybody has their drama, their romances, and one of them gets caught up with some criminal situation.
of course.
Um, yeah, I mean, I don't remember too much of the plot. I just remember like every movie, there's like the big competition at the end, and they all get together, and they do their big dance number. And subsequently, Quincy Jones, who also did a couple of scores for some of Sidney's movies back in the way old days, he was a music supervisor on this film, along with James Ingram and a number of other artists. But yeah, I like to call it, this was his magnum opus because it feels like it's supposed to be this huge movie, but it is not. It is not a good film. Our friend Vishon Quiones could tell you this is a piece of garbage.
Oh man. I'm probably someday gonna watch it, but you're not selling it as a must see. And then unfortunately he ended his directing career with something almost as bad. Luckily not Leonard Part 6, but close to it because Bill Cosby actually promoted the credit for this film, which is Ghost Dad, a movie I saw in theaters. I will admit, I saw this movie in theaters. Whatever. It was 1990. I was 12. Bill Cosby was still a big television star and comedian. And, I didn't really think about the premise, how it was. And then I saw the movie, and yeah, it's bad. I can see why this is the last movie Sidney Poitier directed. I mean, it has special effects, but it's early special effects and not practical. It does look like it's more digital special effects, and they're not that impressive. But it is one of the first films where I ever heard Bill Cosby curse. So that's the only credit I can give the movie. And strangely, I was a television fan, so I was like, oh, the black girl from Head of the Class is in this, who's not Robin Givens. And then I was like, wow, I know you were too young for this, but I was like, Bobby from Twin Peaks is in this too? I gotta see this film, Yeah, it's bad. There's nothing nice I can really say about this movie. It's maybe a good family film, but even kids, especially modern day kids, will roll their eyes watching this movie. And not to mention, I don't know if you want to show your kids a kids movie starring Bill Cosby where there is some weird ghost sex scene in it. Yet it's PG. So that shows you the type of film it is. Have you ever seen Ghost Dad, Andre?
I did, and I'm trying to remember either my parents rented it from Blockbuster or if I saw it on TV when it first aired. I know there were a lot of airings of this movie back then. It's interesting because it was written by the guys that wrote Short Circuit, and it was going to be a vehicle for Steve Martin at one point, and then it fell apart before it became a Bill Cosby movie. And I guess he suggested Sidney Poitier to do it because maybe he didn't trust that Leonard Part 6 didn't work. So let me get my best friend to come in and make sure this one gets done right. It's a weird film. I mean, it was kind of like I got vibes of like Memoirs of the Invisible Man watching it. It's
Yeah.
just one of those movies where they really try to push the ghost effects in the film, like when he's doing like the boardroom scene, and they can only see him when the lights are dark, but when they're on, then they can't see him. So he makes this whole thing. I got to do the presentation while it's dark. I remember that. I remember getting a little freaked out with Kimberly Russell falling down the stairs, and then she becomes a ghost, and she's like, "Oh, this is so fun," until she realizes she's dead.
And he has to convince her to go back.
It was always, what weirded me out recently. I haven't watched this movie, by the way, in years, but the last time I remember watching it,
Okay.
The whole sequence when Cosby, the way he dies in the film is he's in a taxi with a devil worshiper and falls off this bridge. I didn't know to use the music from the movie Sorcerer, the Tangerine Dream score, which was also like, wow, that is even more weird and warped for a family-friendly movie like this.
Maybe he really liked the music.
It was just totally out of place, and yet I think Harry Mancini did the music for this movie.
Yes.
People with Tangerine Dream. That's interesting combination right there.
Well, hello, it's a Sidney Poitier movie.
Yes, it's a Sidney Poitier. But yeah, it's not great. It's a little bit racist to have a black. I like Soul. I like Pixar Soul, which did this better. But this movie, not so much.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's better than Leonard Part 6, but that's all the best that I could say about it. And Denise Nichols looked good.
Hey,
and Kimberly Russell, who I still have a crush on.
Hey, I am not above admitting I kind of like Leonard Part 6. It's horrible, but I like it. It's okay. So now we're going to